Audiobook Essence of Freedom. Written by Inazo Nitobe, first published on March 1919. Internal rule and external rule. In Analects of Confucius this phrase, I obey my desire but do not break a rule, definitely describes and makes clear very well about definition of freedom as I explained before, and thaniasked mijelf watraluis thof it would be divided roughly into internal rule and external rule, which imention. External rule is demand pressure forciers and also custom manner nation law was being similar coming from outside butevaninthism and ingo external rule that you can deeply accept and obey without any complaints from your heart, or that you are willing to make if theorize no existence of custom manner law. At first glance it seems to look like external rule thof when it matches what our will wants it is no longer to see it external rule. Thus since such law of constitutional country would be enacted by nation people themselves, which the nation people wants that it would be difficult to divide into internal or external of the law. However, even if I make a law when breaking the law, the punishment will come for you from outside. Even if abute law enacted by a congress, a congressman worked for making the law zone of special committee members, when violating provision of the law the congressman was not able to escape from the sanctions. By police or other outside force you would be punished. In these meaning law will be finally called external rule. Custom seems as well. Needless to say, when violating custom or manner, punishment would not be done every time. A young man generally wears a common navy and white pattern clothes, though if he breaks this custom and wears bright red clothes to school, this could not be punished. However, people around him would probably laugh at and see him as a madman. His friends would not like to work with him. Perhaps teachers would keep away from him. Coming to think of those above, even though it seems not a break law when breaking manner to ordinary people general, I think good the punishment would rise would be eliminated from its society. Such like this breaking external rule brings result that you would have external punishment to yourself. Even in things disagreeing in your mind are not completely impress in you at all. When you hold external rule for almost things and cooperate with society or nation, finally you can at least to be without any exclusion, insult and oppression from society. What do you want in your heart? So after you obey external rule for almost things, you can get so-called freedom as a compensation. If so, but whether justly obeying law, custom and habit brings freedom, since it brings only external freedom, it cannot be said that the freedom is completely thorough to bottom of heart. In other words, even if you cannot completely obey a work custom of nation, in short, nevertheless here is what you don't want to be in your heart. When you would ostensibly obey those obediently, it would be to deceive yourself, which might mean to break internal rule. A person having mind as internal rule. Person has thought in each. It is at that even a 30mm size insect thus a 15mm size soul, but he would rather say a 30mm insect thus a 150mm size soul. Soul is much bigger than body. Even a so-called crude person who not famous on does not belong to ny class has many things to think or want, note inferior to royal aristocrat. This is not me and thadiac person has many desires or no limitation of desirous thought. What he would like to see is that each person has an affected belief or thought. Deepest base in the believer. Thought is called conscience and good wisdom's aid be a Yangming scholar true heart forming amon ashaman good and devil heart said by Mencius or something thuts a metamesia do not think a part of you exist in your mind. A famous England author, Mr. Wealth, has recently released his book with surprise in society. Such this man learn at various category knowledge and das very deep academia background of en high college stanather. Though he's famous for non-religious theory, recently for the first time he has published a book of God in which he horribly insults Christianity, and he certs had heckin not logically allowed God of Christianity but God he belly evs rather finds out would existiniac people mind share if you with each people be born when each people is born and disappear together when headies. However, it is not so-called ego but independent existency and just resides in his body. Butit warn shim, save shimandit sur ligart shim when something talathim gaurankums, and if he disobeys it intensely blame shim suthathe suffers. A long time ago a Yangming scholar Sangha *Tanka, In a Shintasharan people comsto pray the god does a note exist but exists in heart of people which seems themis similar to god. A will note intent to talk about his more religious theory though in each people without distinction between old and ungorai and low status as wrote above something such like god stasantoic person which is strongly believe and anybody cannot deny even does not believe it. Therefore what this amething conceivably recommends or commands or prohibits is that he would like to call internal rule. A person was notable to disobey even if trying to disobey and when person does forcibly disobey it a person would feel anxious for the remaining life which is internal rule enacted be so called the Godorthidaman written by Socrates long time Egurth voice written in Old Testament even though those synomies are different depending on a person anyway with going beyond a person something having great authority exists which everybody would admit. Everybody would admit butanli if always obeys it. Asterisk Tanka. Japanese ancient lyric formulated with 5,7,5,7,7 character numbers and order. In some a person obeying very well would be good person and if always obeying that person would be good knowledge virtue and integrity person. Confucius reached in 70 years old for the first time eat place and not break law though it might mean rather internal rule than external rule. Confucius when he wagia ung si met to be often avoided beother people and sagat antipathy from others thought he haven evereard that the terribly broke custom and manner and even if he broke external rule he might break he indecent public opinion. Generally nevertheless from I engage he seemed to by external rule very well though he certeth the theory aka place and not break rule line 70 years old for the first time. The rule must be internal rule which I guess. If so all Confucius wanted would be qual tohat was ordered be his conscious. In opposite view what conscious orders is note qual even on sto hate mind wants. His desire of mind and order of true heart matched. Perhaps this is a little extreme but Confucius might reach it where the Godanuman matched. Therefore I'd not put the God and Confucius equally though it was just so called match. Under will oft got that the author Mr. Wealth wrote. Conflict between internal rule and external rule. External rule is a to obey. Even if a person always obeys it that person is still just an ordinary nation people or a citizen. On the other hand internal rule is very hard to be though instead if a person completely obey it that person would become a so called a good knowledge virtue and integrity person. However, what internal rule orders does not always match what external rule orders and something that ordinary citizen assumes as good custom and manner or great law when a good knowledge virtue and integrity person or forerunner looks at it. I recognize it as sotoftity or meaning lesser harmfulness which are no tafua. In this case external rule requires to be viewed internal rule orders oppositions to it's a thought conflict between internal and external occurs and then struggle occurs in mind which rule should be obeyed which an ordinary person can not imagine. In this case we ordinary people throw internal rule away and thus requested by external rules a thought safely and so called freely we can live in our lives which many of us seems to prefer beautiful runner such like a good knowledge virtue and integrity person thinks had internal rule is more important than external rule, and with going against this mind asking so called stability and so called freedom is not agreed sudhad in normal society even with sacrifice of so called stability and prominence he tries to further jet internal freedom and stability. This can be remembered as examply of forerunner until today. In recent example those showing Yoshide sang that with knowing doing so and then becoming so Yamato soul cannot be stopped after breaking law the time his life would bedanger which he completely knew and in other words after breaking external rule he would lose the external profit and freedom life which he knew but who is notable to surely stop and disobey order born in his mind and finally he read into hair had to be the rule. In astery of the Christ if he treat himself as people wanted did not say anything that the wanted to say. Executed what the disagreed and did not oppose it to a government policy of time he might not be in any inconveniency and no be terribly dead such like that. Regardless of Eastern or Western and world people beaten for principle, slaughtered for religion or sacrificed themselves withholding honest advanced thought from thera were people who have experienced conflict between internal rule and external rule and will abide internal rule instead of external rule each time. For talking about democracy about freedom being big on of elements of democracy while thinking that freedom is just legal right or social privilege I feel that he still don't understand genuine freedom. After recognizing freedom not breaking internal rule at last I think I can understand true meaning of democracy. I am extremely not familiar with the Buddhist though as often taught in the sutra it does not mean that perfect equality illegal or social thing but the meaning would be much deeper and more supreme than what he say here which I believe even of extent that he explain here would not be understood of what freedom is reaching at democratic ideal seems extremely hard. Democracy leader. Besides a person being going to become a democracy leader unless forgetting internal freedom the person has a will as the samelavilas abandoning external freedom right the person would not get the proposed done. Forerunners are always rejected from theory. They go head from society in theory in on or 2 steps or 20 steps. It is at that a commander effectively moving soldier stays in theory though body itself off the commander goes ahead in some steps and eats theory. Body exists in society but it does not belong to it thus. Misunderstanding coming from society is natural. In another meaning it is not misunderstanding but it is understood in low level. It is at that sparrow wedding baden yardo as not no mind o fegli thof which does not mean that even sparrow misunderstands swaliman do fegel sparrow understands mind o fegel in onor 100 but sparrow do as not understand around 7 in 100. This is not misunderstanding but indistinct. With fearing indistinct going against self-consciences disloyalty to no tunly self-but also society. In short because a forerunner society can move forward. If thought of people in a nation were completely unified to a same there were no different thought in any category how can society go ahead, since person going beyond so-called thought of tira existed even if the person was skilled would be given benefit coming from the person which does not need to look back old example. And at the Meiji Reformation all people are forming Japan nation in view of government athira real opponents nation sellers and people holding God dangerous thoughts. They sacrifice it themselves. In fact New Japan was reborn with them. So-called not falling in Totsai rice called asterisk kai of Isai Sato taught right about this point though even no matter how strong external pressure is. Disobeying what would not be greed and heart is not ofalento desire. Asterisk kai means such like support stubborn or so in Japanese. Perhaps the worthiest rights in being born as a human would be to follow its heart. There is no another law of heart at least no law superior than heart. Of course if this theory were strongly insisted even though uninspired heart of person is also heart when an uninspired person obeys the heart and disobeys others society would not be formed. If so as I mentioned before so-called, even after being free there is nothing to choose with animal of Rousseau. Thus, about teaching of Mencius or Yome the oppression politics of Takuga Watuk. Their teaching is dangerous and did not teach which was no under. Now I mention here a little bit regarding Toyome and decency of freedom though reader seems to have already known but of the theory when trong I mijal fandal so society would go wrong so that the theory is very dangerous and since the theory is very dangerous I think it should need tajit attention and mention achieved hate theory. Disclaimer. Copyright. Copyright 2021 by BISAM Urban Real Estate Society Institute. All rights reserved. No part of any contents in this channel which will bear fair toast the contents after here may not bear produced store at an retrieval system or transmitted in any form or be any means in any written electronic, mechanical photocopying recording or otherwise. The contents are for personal use only. You cannot amend distribute sell use, quote or paraphrase any partoral the contents within this channel. While a author have used it is forts in preparing the contents the author make an or presentation or no warranties with respect to the accuracy or completeness of the contents in this channel and specifically disclaimer any implied warranties of merchantability or fitness for a particular purpose. The author assumes an responsibility for any errors or omissions. Liability is assumed for damage that may result from the of information contained within the contents. The end.